So when I got to Southwest, Herb Kelleher and I had sat down after we interviewed, and I interviewed with the board, and I told Herb, I'm willing to leave United and come here, but I got to be certain that you guys are going to continue to change the way the game is played. There's that old story, some people play the game, others change the way the game is played. And I said, I think you're on the right track, and if deregulation does occur, I'd like to be a part of that. And we shook hands, and that was it. So I told Herb on day one, I figured out I've got 3 things to do with your help and the team. One, we got to get a vision statement down on a piece of paper, because there was no budgets. It was pretty much run loosey-goosey. It was working, and they were starting to make money, but there was no flight plan. So I said, we got to have a vision. We got to figure out what business we're in, and then we've got to develop the culture that supports this. And Herb agreed. So one of the first things we did was we took the team off-site, and it took us a day and a half. And if you haven't gone through this experience, I highly recommend it. But I moderated it, facilitated it, and I just said to the group of about 9, including Herb, we're not leaving this room until we can write up on the wall in 100 words or less, what are we going to be when we grow up? What if deregulation does happen? What are we going to do? So we argued for 10 hours that day. Well, we ought to buy 747s. We ought to fly to Hawaii. We ought to do this, we do that. And at that time, Southwest only flew within the state of Texas, because you couldn't get out of Texas because of the Civil Aeronautics Board had not approved a new route or an airline in years, and that was part of the problem. They regulated the prices, they regulated where you flew, et cetera, et cetera. So after 10 hours, we took a break, went to our house out in Plano, and had some beer and hot dogs, and everybody got loosened up. And the next morning when we came back, it was amazing. Within an hour, it hit all of us. It wasn't my idea, and that was the best part. It wasn't my idea, but we figured out then we weren't an airline, that we were in mass transportation. And that was the single business we stayed in. Now we thought we knew how to do one thing very well. And regardless of what everybody else did, this was the route we were going to go. About that same time, when I first got to Southwest, they had a reception for me with the business community downtown one evening, and one of our board members was a banker. And there were probably 250 executives from all over North Texas. Great evening. But when everybody was leaving and I was shaking hands with everybody, there was one person still over at the hors d'oeuvre table. I could see the back of the person. So I went over to see who it was, and who was it but the chairman of the board and the CEO of Braniff International, Harding Lawrence, the man who had done such a great job under regulation. And he had big bushy eyebrows, kind of like Howard Hughes. And he turned to me and he said, Mr. Putnam, do you think airline deregulation will occur? I said, yes, Mr. Lawrence, I think it will, and we're planning for it. And he said, so do I, and I'm planning for it also. And then he couldn't resist telling me what his plan was. His ego was already erupting, and you got to be careful of that in this industry as all the new opportunities arrive. He said, I think deregulation will happen, but it won't last long. The public won't stand for it, so there'll be re-regulation. So I'm going to expand as quick as I can and get my flag in as many cities and countries as possible before they stop it and send it back the other way. Shook my hand and he left. I went home and told Krista, told her what happened. I said, that man is obsessed. He is already going to do it no matter what it costs him. And he did. And he borrowed another 3 or 4, deregulation happened then about 4 months later. And he borrowed about $400 million to buy airplanes and all kinds of stuff. He let the union contracts get totally out of control, and the losses began to begin. So his first route that he picked, you could have one free route in the first 90 days, I think, of deregulation. He took Dallas to London or Dallas to Seoul, Korea. I forget which one. And what did we take at Southwest Airlines? We took Dallas Love Field to New Orleans. Everybody said, boy, that's really exciting. And that was our first little interstate hop. But you know what? We had figured out that if you follow the interstate highways between two cities, and they're not more than about 250 miles apart, people drive back and forth a lot to do business. What if we could get them out of the automobile and get them in the airplane? What does it take to do that? And it takes a fare that was comparable to what you'd pay in driving. And we learned that if it was under 300 miles round trip, and you put in 7 flights a day, you could double the size of the market within a year. You would, like from Dallas to Oklahoma City, 240,000 people had flown the year before DFW to Oklahoma City. A year after we went from Dallas Love to Oklahoma City, we carried 240,000. The other 240,000 were still there. We didn't take it away. We created a new market. We expanded the size of the pie. And I think that's one of your challenges now with solar, et cetera. It's expanding that pie and not just stealing from each other.